Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ignorant Intellectual on Media. Today, I thought we would do our third book to movie comparison. Which one is better? Which one is better to do first, or get one and avoid the other? So, I've already done two. The first one was, if I remember correctly, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? The second was Starship Troopers, and now the third one will be Blade Runner. All right, so this book looks like it's called Blade Runner, but it's not called Blade Runner. It's actually in brackets. If you see the brackets there, it says "Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?" That's actually the name of the book by Philip K. Dick. All right, one of the great science fiction writers of all time, Philip K. Dick, um, American guy. Anyway, so Blade Runner, what they did was after they put this film out in 1982, they reissued this book and put Blade Runner and basically, you know, made it look like it's a Blade Runner book. Anyway, so this book is called "Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?" It's not called Blade Runner. All right? In fact, Blade Runner didn't exist when this book was put out and printed numerous times. It wasn't until 1982 when the movie came out that you started seeing a cover like this. All right, and it just takes away from the whole book. It's like you're reading Blade Runner. And Blade Runner, the book, which is this, "Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?" is not the same as this movie. All right, there's many differences to it. All right, so the basic premise of the two is the same. Basically, you have a bounty hunter that works for the cops that hunts down rogue androids and retires them, kills them. All right, and he does it um, for money. In the book, that's how it is. I can't remember. I don't think that's the way it is in the movie. He does in the movie. He's an actual cop. All right, so that's the first basic difference. Harrison Ford as Deckard is actually a cop that works on Earth for the police station. All right. So in the book, this takes place in San Francisco, uh, which is the same as in the movie, if I remember it correctly. So it's been a while since I watched the movie, but I've watched the movie like at least 30 or 40 times. So some details will escape me, but most of them won't. All right. Um, so that's one of the basic differences. But there's differences everywhere. The two main differences that you'll notice first off is that you can tell that Blade Runner the movie was made back in the 80s because Ridley Scott took a theme like an anti-Japanese, anti-Asian theme to the book, where there's you see it in other films around that time as well, because there was this big, the Americans were looking at the Japanese as enemies almost in that because their technology was outpacing the United States. Their cars were better, their electronics were better, and there was this fear in the United States that the Japanese would basically take over the American economy by through imports of electronics and cars and things like that, right? So you saw a backlash in films during that time. Blade Runner is one of them. Another one is like Die Hard when they make Die Hard in the Nakatomi Plaza, which is owned by Japanese, and all the Americans work for the Japanese in there, and Bruce Willis in it. Uh, has a bit of like what do the Japanese know about Christmas? These kind of things, right? And there's even a joke that one of the Japanese, like the CEO of the Japanese company, says, "We couldn't get you by this way, so we're going to get you by tape decks or tape decks or whatever." I can't remember the exact. Anyway, so there is a anti-Japanese sentiment that was going around the United States at the time, and you see it reflected in this film because basically much of this film, although it's taking place in, I think it's in San Francisco, it's mostly Deckard is dealing with mostly Asians. Um, on the street, it's mostly Asian. Where he gets his food, it's Asians. Um, when he goes starting hunting the androids, most of the people that work for this corporation are Asians, right? Um, so the whole of San Francisco seems like like a Chinatown almost, right? I don't know if the whole city is that, but basically the around the movie it's on. You see the big billboards, the electronic billboards on the side of buildings. They're all of Japanese women, that kind of thing. So there's like a Ridley Scott, I guess, envisioned that maybe it was true that the Japanese were taking over through their electronics, and basically San Francisco is now, um, Japanese run or Japanese, dominated or whatever, right? You don't see that in the book. In the book, there's no mention of Japanese people or the Japanese influence of anything, right? Okay, so that's the main thing. The main thing for the movie is you'll see a big Asian or Japanese theme to the city, all right? In the book, you don't see that. Now, in the book, there's a heavy concentration. There's that were in the book, three main things that were in the book that weren't in the movie. One is a high concentration on trying to own things that are alive. All right. So people will have pet goats, pet sheep, pet horses, pet whatever, because on Earth after the whatever nuclear holocaust it was, and everybody is going off world to live on Mars and other planets or whatever, and the people that are left behind on Earth are the dregs of society, right? Um, they want to. So alive things are very important to people to own, right? So I mean, people will spend like 5 years of their salary to own a horse or something, right? Or a rabbit, or Deckard in the book, he owns an electric sheep, and then he bought a goat, and he bought a real live goat. He had a sheep before, but the sheep died, and he replaced it with a artificial sheep. But then he replaced it with a goat. All right, and it brought him joy. I mean. It's like the main purpose in life on Earth is to try to own a live animal of some sort, right? Which I mean, you in the film you see an owl when Deckard goes over to the Tyrell Corporation to do a test on a Nexus 6. That's the latest version of Android that's out there, and six of them escaped off world and came to Earth, and Deckard is tasked with hunting them down and killing them. All right, so that's the main purpose, main plot of the film, right? So he goes over to the Tyrell Corporation. The Tyrell Corporation is the company that makes these androids. He's going to do a Voight comp test on a Nexus 6, which is the latest type of android, right? And that girl ends up being, what was her name? Her name was, it's this girl here. Sean Young plays her in the film. Um, Her name was Rachel. That's right, Rachel. All right, so he goes over and he gives the test on Rachel, and the test works. So he was brought in just like in the movie, as in the book. He was brought in to hunt these people down because one of the androids, while having a Voight comp test, killed the previous cop that was chasing after them. But in the film, they're cops. In the book, they're bounty hunters that work for the cops, right? So there's a difference there. Anyway, so Deckard is going to hunt these people down, and the ones in the book, some of them have a same name, but their um, jobs or whatever are different in the book and the movie. Anyway, so what they did was they came down to Earth, these androids, and they infiltrated Earth, acting like humans, right? Okay, and then it's up to Richard for Deckard or Harrison Ford to go find them and hunt them down and kill them. Okay, um, so that's what happens in both films. But like in the book, there's there's a lot of words dedicated to um, the you're working in order for you to buy an animal, and when you own an animal, it makes you happy. And there's nothing like that in the movie. All right. Now the two other things are there's uh, there's something that's called a Penfield mood organ that's in the book, where people uh, will, I don't know how the machine works, but they put in a certain code, and it makes them feel either good or makes them feel depressed or makes them feel happy, makes them feel elated, makes them feel all these different emotions, and they'll feel them for a good amount of time by using this Penfield mood organ. All right, so that's another different. You don't see that at all in the movie. And the third thing is there's this. other machine that you grab a hold of like this, and it shoots you into a world where there's this old man climbing up a hill. And what was his name? Um, I can't remember his name. What was his name? Um, anyways, this old man has a name, and it's almost like it's a religion. And why you go there and grab. Everybody has one of these machines in their places. And they do it, and what they do is they get transported to this guy who talks to him, who's going up a hill or whatever, and it's supposed to make you feel empathy for other people and everything, right? So I have a whole bunch of things written down that I'll go through of the differences and everything, but just talking for now. Um, so in the movie, there is no mention of that mood machine or that handled machine that you end up getting transported in your mind to this old man, and then you feel all the other humans that are attached to this machine around you also, right? So it's kind of a cathartic thing, right? So all right, but let me go through all the other differences between the two. All right, so in the film, Deckard is single, but in the movie sorry, in the film he's single, but in the book he's married to a girl named Iran. All right, so that's another difference. And when he goes out hunting androids, he's hunting them to get the bounty in order to bring money home so he can buy an animal that his wife and him can share. All right, um, so you have the Penfield mood organ. All right, you dial it to create different moods in the listener of this machine. Right, so um, now in the movie, the the company that builds the Nexus 6 androids is called the Tyrell Corporation. In the book, it's actually called the Rosen Association. All right. Um, and let's see. Okay, so there's one of the main characters in the book is similar to one of the main characters in the movie, and that's John Sebastian. All right. So um, he is a dummy, or what they call a chicken head in the book. There's no mention of him being a chicken head. And he's associated with the with the Tyrell Corporation. Is it Tyrell or I think it's Tyrell, isn't it? Yeah, or is it the Rand Corporation? No, it's Tyrell. It's the Tyrell Corporation, right? So um, he works for the Tyrell Corporation in the film, um, making hands or something. I can't remember exactly. Does he make? Makes part of the Nexus 6 androids. He works for the Tyrell Corporation, and he has all these little. He lives alone, so he has all these little things that he builds, like little trinkets, little, like a army man or joking man or whatever, these little mechanical things that keep him company. In the book, he's just he drives a delivery car for a repair shop that repairs, artificial animals or whatever, right? So there's a difference there. Now, is it Triss? I think it's Triss, uh, the Daryl Hannah character in the film, is also in the book, and she ends up moving into an apartment below where John Sebastian is, and they end up meeting each other. In the film, she pretends that she's in a whole bunch of garbage near the building where he lives, and then she gets up and is thinking about running away, but then they become friends. But she did that on purpose, because she wanted. Because okay, so another difference is, um, in the film, the reason why they killed a whole bunch of humans off world in order to gain a spaceship to come to Earth is because the Tyrell Corporation put a failsafe in the Nexus 6 androids, and that is a lifespan of like 5 years. And Roy Batty is the leader of the androids. He goes to Earth with the rest of the androids to try to extend his and the others' lives. Right? He can't accept that he's going to die in a 5-year span or whatever. Right? So he escapes off world where they're used as slave labor, in order to come to Earth to extend his life or whatever, right? So they try to infiltrate the Tyrell Corporation in order to find these things out. That's what that. So that's the motivation of the androids, and the motivation of Deckard is to go kill them because that's his job as a police officer, is to hunt these androids down, right? So um, in the book, they came down in order to live a life rather than be slaves or whatever. They weren't looking to extend their life because there is no, doesn't mention anything about lifespans of the Nexus Six in the book, right? So there is a bunch of different changes. So that's another change. Another one is, yeah, it's called the Mercer Empathy Box. Basically, you grab a hold of it and it shoots you to this old man who's named Mercer, and it's almost like a religion where you coexist with all these other people that are holding machines, and you have empathy for them and everything. It's supposed to make you more human or whatever, right? All right. What else was there? Okay, in the gun in the film, they use like like laser guns or whatever. In the book, they're called laser tubes. All right, and they don't really go into detail how these laser tubes work, but it in some points it seems like it's like a lightsaber, and in other points it seems like it's a gun. So I'm not sure exactly how the laser tube works, right? So uh, there's also a radio and a television show in the book that's called the Buster Friendly Show, and it's basically the only show that's on TV at the time, and it's state run, and everybody watches that show. There's no mention of that in the book, in the movie as well, right? Um, and there's also a second um, police station with other bounty hunters that the androids set up when they came to Earth. So there's actually a couple of androids that work in this pseudo police station, and people don't even know that that police station exists. Anyway, it was kind of weird how Philip K. Dick tried to do that. I don't think it worked that well in the book. I mean, because Deckard shows up to kill the in the movie, it was the girl that had the artificial snake that was kind of like a stripper. Well, in the book, that character is an opera singer, um, and she doesn't even know she's, or does she know? Yeah, she knows, but she's pretending to be an. She's a good opera singer, and she's pretending to be human. And she ends up calling the police when Deckard shows up to exterminate her, and the police come and stop him from killing her, and she says he's crazy, he thinks I'm an android, da 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 da. And so you get lost in the book going, okay, what the hell's going on? Because they arrest Deckard, the police officer arrests Deckard, brings him to a police station, and there's this whole police station that's there that Deckard knows nothing about, and they know nothing about him as being a bounty hunter or whatever precinct that he is talking about. They don't know it exists. So it's a bit confusing in the book. And then it turns out that that is a made up police station by androids, but there are humans that are working there that don't realize that it's a made up police place, right? So it didn't really, it didn't seem believable, right? So anyways, that never happened in the movie either. So basically, the movie is Deckard works for the police, goes hunts androids. The androids came down to Earth in order to try to extend their life because Roy Batty, who's the leader of them, doesn't want to die. All right, so um, that's the movie. In the book, he just hunts androids as a bounty hunter. That's how he gets paid. He has a wife, and his whole central urge to do anything is so that he can get a live animal because they're super expensive. In fact, he carries around a manual that lists all the different animals that aren't extinct and what the prices of them are to buy them, right? So it's called, what is it called? Um, the Sydney's book, it's called Sydney's Catalog. Sydney's Catalog. So Sydney's Catalog lists all the different animals that are still alive, even though they're very rare and scarce. And if you were to buy one off a dealer, how much it would cost you, what the going rate of it is, right? And he carries one of these around wherever he goes, and he's always thinking about buying, a real animal, right? So it's where the title of the book came. Do androids dream of electric sheep, right? Because humans dream of sheep when they're trying to fall asleep, right? Yeah. Anyway, so um, what else? So in the film, Rachel works for the Tyrell Corporation, and she thinks she's actually the daughter of Tyrell, who owns the corporation. She doesn't realize that she's a android, right? A Nexus 6, right? So um, she kind of figures that she is after um, Deckard gives her the Voight Comp test. She kind of starts suspecting it. This is in the film, right? Well, in the movie, in the book, Rachel always already knows that she's a Nexus 6, and she's actually working with those 6 androids that came down to Earth, right? And so Deckard at one point was going to kill her, and then she kind of begged for her life. And she's slept with almost every bounty hunter that's ever come after any of the Nexus 6 before Deckard did it. She would sleep with these bounty hunters, and then kind of change their minds about them wanting to hunt them once they sleep with her, right? So she's basically almost like a slut in the book, where she isn't in the movie. In the movie, there's a big question on whether Deckard is actually a an android, and he falls in love with Rachel in the film, and they want to go away together, right? So um, in the book, he finds out that she sets him up um, with the androids, and he barely escapes with his life, and then he ends up, he's going to kill Rachel. Now, Rachel, so in the movie, Roy Batty does not have a wife. There's just these 5 people that have with him have infiltrated society in Earth, right? And he goes around. He goes to the Asian guy that made his eyes, wanting to set up to try to go see Terrell, to talk to Terrell, and he finally, by the end of the film, he does talk to Terrell, and Terrell says that, when you burn so bright, you're going to live half as long or whatever. So he said that it's just genetically made to live 5 years. There's nothing that Tyrell could do about it. So then Roy ended up killing Tyrell for it, right? Um, so uh, Deckard in the film hunts them all down, kills all of them, and then ends up with with Roy at the end. And basically, Deckard doesn't kill Roy. Um, Roy gets the better of him and could kill Deckard if he wants, but he doesn't want to kill him because he's in a philosophical mood, because he's coming to the end of his life, and they're up on the top of the building, and Roy just sits down on top of the building and dies while he's sitting on the floor of the building or whatever, right? So the roof of the building, right? In the film, in the book, Deckard kills Roy, gets him with the laser tube or whatever, and blows the shit out of him or whatever, right? So um, now in the movie, Deckard returns to Rachel, and then they start a life together. It's a bit confusing at the end there, and there's like 4 different versions of Blade Runner. You know what I mean? So, um, and but in the book, uh, he returns to his wife, and Rachel ended up killing his goat, and but he ended up killing all the androids, and he has enough money. He wants to buy a sheep after he bought the goat, but um, he doesn't buy it, right? Um, so in the book, Rachel has a twin. Well, a Nexus 6 version, who is actually the wife of Roy. All right, and her name is Isidore. No, Irmgard. Irmgard. So Roy in the book has a wife, her name is Irmgard, and she's actually, identical to Rachel because they're both the same Nexus 6 version, that female version. So, um, in the movie, Roy doesn't have a wife. There is no Irmgard in the film, right? Um, so that's basically the differences between the two, where it's like a Japanese world where Deckard is a cop hunting down these Nexus 6 uh, androids who are on Earth to find a way that they can extend their life. All right. Whereas in the book, Deckard is married. He's a bounty hunter. He's not a cop. He works for the cops as a bounty hunter. He's going to kill these 6 androids to collect money so that he can actually buy a live animal, because that's what everybody wants to do when they're on Earth, is to own a live animal rather than an artificial animal, right? And that's the main purpose of the book. So there's him hunting down androids so he can buy a live animal. There's the Mercer empathy machine. There's the Penfield mood organ that changes your mood from happy to sad or whatever. You know what I mean? So there's big differences between the two. Um, and the film actually is, it shows a dilemma, right? And a philosophical point of view between Deckard and Roy. Roy's a killer, but he's also philosophical, right? So there's this philosophy in the film where if you make androids so human by giving them memories, because in the film they give them memories because they're more stable if they think they've had a past, right? Even though it's just implanted memories. If you make androids so human that they feel human and they act human, shouldn't they all have the same rights as human rather than being hunted down like dogs? That kind of thing. That's the question in the film that you don't. I mean, it touches on it in the book, but not very much. The main focus of the book seems to be him hunting down so he can get money in order to buy live animals. So what Philip K. Dick's main purpose in the book is, it's all about Earth after a Holocaust, and all the plant life and all the animal life dies, and everybody wants to get that back, and they're willing to pay tons of money to do it, right? Whereas in the movie has nothing to do about that. It's about the nature of humanity and how far is too far, making androids like humans and so on and so forth, right? So overall, what's my verdict? So is the book better than the movie, or is the movie better than the book? Now, I watched the movie when it first came out in 1982, and I was quite impressed with it. Um, in fact, here's a little story. Uh, the first time I saw Blade Runner was in a negative form. Um, at the time, back in 1982, there there was no internet, obviously, right? And people watched TV on CRT television. But what there was at that time was something called the Movie Network, or First Choice and Super Channel, all right, that merged to become the Movie Network. But this was still First Choice and Super Channel time. First Choice came out first, and then Super Channel was their competitor. And what it is that on your cable, uh, on in your cable box, they have higher stations uh, that you need to buy. The cable company has to send a signal through your cable line in order to descramble certain channels. So you would get the channels, but they would be in negative form. Everybody looked like, picture negative, right? And they would wave and everything. So you can't really watch the movie unless you pay the cable company, and then they'll send a descrambling signal to your box or whatever, and then you can watch all these movies. So there's actually dedicated movie channels. What would happen is movies would go into the cinema, and then a couple of months after they finished in the cinema, you'd get them on television in the upper channels on these, the Movie Network or First Choice or Super Channel, whatever, right? So um, it was like HBO in the States, whatever, right? It started off as a movie network that would show the movies that were in the cinema at the time a few months earlier, right? So you would pay a certain amount like a subscription to unscramble this movie channel, right? So, well, I watched Blade Runner. Um, we didn't have any money. I was living in Montreal at the time with my mom. I was like young or whatever. I was like a teenager or whatever. Um, so I was nothing to watch on TV, so I put it on that channel, and I basically watched the film in negative form. I watched it like two or three times, and then I was babysitting at the time, and the girl I babysat her kids for um, had first choice. So I finally actually got to see the film in regular form, and I was blown away by it. I thought that was such an amazing film, right? Um, a lot of people panned it because at the time Harrison Ford was doing like the Star Wars movies and the Indiana Jones movies, so he was like this big, huge action star in these big, huge action sci-fi films. And then Blade Runner comes out, and it's more of a cerebral film. The action scenes are quite short. They're not like, it's not an adventure. It's more of a, it's like Vangelis, this this Greek electronic genius. If you've never listened to any of his music, he does the soundtrack, and it's all really mellow, and you could fall asleep to it almost. It's hypnotic, right? And it's slow paced, right? So everybody's looking at Star Wars and Indiana Jones, and then Harrison Ford stars in this other science fiction film, and everybody's looking at it be like Star Wars, and then it's like really slow paced, and it's more cerebral, more intellectual film, and a lot of people said, "Oh, that movie's crap." Um, but after its initial release, and then it goes into the archives, people start watching it, and they take a step back and realize how great this film is, and it's one of the greatest films of all time. It's probably Ridley Scott's greatest film, right? So, a book compared to that, all right, even though the movie is based on the book, I think Ridley Scott did a great job at the movie. Now, I did see the movie when it first came out in negative form, was blown away, and then I watched it finally in regular form, and I'm going, man, that's an awesome film, right? And then I probably read the book in my mid mid 20s, like probably maybe, yeah, like maybe 10 years later. I read the book because this is where the movie came from, so I wanted to read the book, and I read the book. And so now I just reread the book, and I just watched the film a few weeks ago, and I still think the film is better than the book. The book is interesting, but there's too much concentration on trying to get an animal, you know. So it was less a philosophical type of book where you're not questioning how far should you go to make androids human-like. If you create them and they think they're human and they feel like they're human, but you treat them as machines, right? Um, as slaves, are you doing something right or wrong? It doesn't really touch in that much in the book, and that's the main. I think that's the main kernel of what would make that book or that movie good, is that idea of how far is too far kind of thing, right? So anyway, so I think the movie is just a bit better than the book. I would highly suggest you read this book though, because it's really good. Um, but if you watch the movie first and then you read the book, you'll probably have it won't be as enjoyable. So I would suggest to read the book first and then watch the movie. All right. So, but I think this movie is one of the greatest films of all time. The book is one of the great science fiction books of all time. But I think the movie outshines the book, and so I would give it to the movie. Now, of course, you always have that bias, right? Depending on what you do. If you read the book first, you probably have a bias towards the book more than the movie. You see the movie first, you probably have a bias towards the movie than the book. All right. So taking that in, though, I still think the movie is just a bit better than the book. All right. And so that's the end of number three of a movie versus book. And hope you enjoyed it. If you liked it, leave a thumbs up. If you get the urge to subscribe, I'd appreciate it. And I'll talk to you in my next video. And you have a good day. And I'll talk to you then. All right. Bye for now.